Perfect. Now, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar titled NFRs versus FRs. My name's Charmaine. I'm part of the IIBA Melbourne branch as the events lead, and I'll be your host this evening. I'm excited for today's presentation where our speaker, Max Roy, discusses non-functional requirements and also functional requirements and the differences in between. Before we get started, I'll go through some general housekeeping and answer some frequently asked questions. But first, an acknowledgement of country. IIBA Australia acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present with us today. Now, as this is a webinar, you'll be able to submit questions for the presenter to answer. So please, if you do have any questions during the presentation, then type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, and just note that the Zoom chat will be disabled. If you do have any technical support problems for the webinar, please type a message in the question box and we'll attend to any technical problems if they arise as well. And also, just to reiterate, this webinar is recorded and will be emailed to you in the next coming days with the slide pack. Now, I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Max Roy. Now, Max is a driven professional, IT professional, who wants to make a difference within business organisations. He's motivated to deliver projects that provide business intelligence in executive decision making. Max's career has spanned over 25 years in roles such as solution, data architect, project manager, business analyst, and IT faculty and trainer. Max has an innovative, pragmatic approach addressing business needs and end-to-end delivery focus. He holds an MBA from University of Maryland, USA. His contact details are just on the screen as well, so if you do want to contact him in private or reach out to him on his LinkedIn, then feel free to do so. Now, the IIBA Melbourne branch brings you the topic of producing functional and non-functional requirements. This can be a challenge because the distinction between FRs and NFRs is often blurred and subject to debate. This interactive presentation analyses some of these challenges in clearly categorizing a business requirement as a FR or an NFR. Now, without further ado, we'll turn the time over to Max Roy. Now, welcome, Max.
Yep, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Charmaine, and thanks everyone for attending. Okay, let me just share my screen. So I'll start sharing, Charmaine, and let me know when you can see it.
Can't see it just yet.
Did you stop sharing your?
Yeah, certainly did.
Okay. So one sec. Okay, just one sec.
That's okay. Okay, I can see your full screen now.
All right. Okay. Okay. Let me just put it on. Could you see that first slide, please? Functional, non-functional business requirements. Can you see that?
We can see your full screen, which has the first slide on the left and the next slide on the right.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay, let's go with that. Okay. Okay, so again, thanks everyone. And my topic today is functional, non-functional business requirements. I've been just to give me just to give you a little background. I've been a business analyst, senior business analyst in various organizations, and I thought it would be a good idea to explore this because I see a lot of gray areas between functional and non-functional. And I hope this kind of resonates with most of the audience. Now, can I just ask how many in the audience are like straight off business analysts? How many are there? Do we have a, if anyone can I don't know, raise their hands or put a reaction?
We've got a few hands that have been raised already.
Okay.
17, 22,
Okay.
26,
Okay.
28. It's going up.
All right. Okay. And that's great. That's great. Excellent. 28 is a very good number. Okay. All right. So let's get, geez, 1 sec. Sorry. Let me just go back. Okay, just I think Charmaine has introduced me, so I won't go into this. So let's go straight into what is a functional requirement, right? And of systems. So in my view, a functional requirement is what is required to get done. So if you're doing a system like starting with an ERP system or a payroll system or any financial system or anything, what is required to get done is a functional requirement. Okay, so it's kind of binary. So for example, if you think of a payroll system, which I guess most of us know about, and a payroll system, you've got to be able to make the correct payment to the people who worked in your organization, right? So that's a functional requirement. The payment must be correct for the days or the hours worked, okay? So that's an example of a functional requirement. So it's kind of binary. Either you get it right or you haven't got it. You know, it's kind of binary in that way. But what is a non-functional is how that would be implemented and the aesthetics of achieving it or implementing the functional requirements. So what do I mean by aesthetics and what do I mean by that? Okay. So these are the abilities in brackets. So usability, portability, accessibility, and also the liveness, responsiveness, robustness. So looking at our payroll example, you might say that, okay, how accessible is the pay slips or other reports made to our employees? By when can I get that information? So if I want to understand, if I want to know for this employee how much was paid last week or last fortnight, how responsive is the system? Does it give me a response within 3 seconds? That's normally the standard, within 3 seconds. And I'll cover the other NFRs later in the piece, but this is what I'm talking about in NFRs, okay?
Sorry, Max, can I just interrupt very briefly? We've just had a comment saying that it's a bit hard to view because you're currently sharing the screen that's got the current slide and the next slide,
Oh,
but
right,
so it's
right.
not the full screen.
Oh,
Sorry
okay,
to
okay.
interrupt, Max.
Yep. No, okay. All right. So, okay. All right. So let me, if I go here and I go here, that gets me back here. How about now? Are you just seeing one slide? Are you seeing?
We're
So we
seeing
can,
the notes at the bottom and the slide,
Oh
like
yeah, are you
run
seeing
and the
the
left.
notes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All
so
right.
down
Okay.
the bottom, just next to the Zoom scroll at the very bottom of the screen, there's a couple
Yep.
of icons to the left. There's an open book icon. If you click on that, that should to the right just a little bit.
Yep.
Yep, there you go.
All right.
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah,
Thanks,
my
Max.
apologies. I'm not used to Zoom. I use Teams pretty much 100% of the time. So my apologies for that. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's get back to it. So we've talked about what is a functional requirement. We talked about what is a non-functional requirement, and we've talked about what the NFRs usually stand for, the accessibility, usability, and all that. Okay. Now, there are gray areas, and I'll get into that in a minute, but it depends on which project you're working on, which site you're working on, okay? And I'll explain that in a minute. So, okay, so what is in the BABOK? As you know, it's the business analyst body of knowledge, version 3. Non-functional requirements as requirements that do not relate to the behavior functionality of the solution, but rather describe conditions under which the solution must remain effective or qualities the solution must have. Okay, so that's in the BABOK, okay? Can I just check once more, Charmaine, are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see?
Yes, we definitely
okay.
can.
All right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Max.
All right. Now, the prime examples of NFRs. Okay, operability, usability. So is it user-friendly? Okay, so let's take let's go with our payroll example, okay, which is something that most of us would have come across. So user-friendly meaning from the main, can I navigate to the places I want to go? I want to see people within a division, the payments made on the division. I want to see payments which did not go through, which had problems or issues. That's what I mean. Can I do it in a usable and a user-friendly way? Okay. We covered responsiveness, accessibility, and is usable by a range of users. And I'll have something more to say about this later in detail. So by a range of people, including people with WCAG, which is the accessibility guidelines, the workplace accessibility guidelines, but those who are, say, colorblind and have accessibility issues. Okay. Maintainability can be changed when required. So for example, our payroll system, if we have a new enterprise agreement in place, okay, and we need to make changes to our payment rates, our leave, our leave conditions and so on, is the system maintainable? Okay, so that's that. And reliable, that is, it is available when needed. Okay, so we might want to access it 24/7. Is it available then? Okay. Robustness. Now, by that I mean that in the payroll system, if something happens, like we're all aware of the cyber attacks, or if the system goes down, has to be brought down, will it recover gracefully from disaster events and aborts? Okay, so that's what I mean by robustness. Or does it? I mean, there are systems I've worked with where it doesn't recover to a safe point. You know, you have to have it down for even 2-3 days before anything, you know, we can get somewhere. So robustness is an important NFR. Security, okay, can the information be trusted? So is the information that we're looking at for payroll, can we trust it, or is it compromised in some way? Okay. Compatibility is how it integrates with our system, and normally say a payroll system will integrate with your rostering application, a separate rostering application, like Kronos is a rostering application. So does it integrate well? Okay. All right, let's move on. Okay. Now let's take a kind of are there any questions so far? Oh, there is some questions. Okay,
so,
can
Max,
I,
a question.
Mars? Yeah, technical solution. Yes, that's about right, Mars. Okay. From what I can see from your question, but I'll have more to say on this later. Can we just park it for a little while and I'll come back to it? All right, Mars? Okay, all right. I want to get into this because I want to do a little interactive session just to bring this, the fact that there are gray areas between functional requirements and non-functionals. Okay, so let's say, can you see this photo of my bike? It's my bike. I'm not a pro rider. I just ride around on my bike. Okay, can everybody see this? Charmaine, are you able to see this?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, all right. So here's a bike. It's just a standard bike. It's got 2 wheels, it's got a gear system, it's got a water bottle, it's got a backpack at the back where I keep my, sometimes I take books along. It's got a helmet, it's got a belt and so on. Okay, so it's a standard bike. It's nothing fancy. All right. Now, what is the functional requirement for a bike? Okay. It's got to have 2 wheels with a drive chain for it to move. It's got to have a frame and handlebars so that the rider can hang on to it. Seats and pedals. Gears. Now, what about gears? And they're also called derailleurs. A derailleur. Is that a functional requirement? Is it functional? Now, I have come across bikes which don't have gears, and some of the old bikes don't have gears. It just got the 2 wheels, but there's no gears. Most bikes now have either 18 gears or 21 gears or even more, right? Is gear a functional requirement? Just want everyone to think about that, okay? What about lights, front and back? And there are lots of riders around where I ride. They don't have lights. But are lights, do you consider lights to be at front and back to be functional or non-functional? Okay, question mark there. Okay, now non-functional, padded seats for comfort. Lots of bikes have no padding, but I would say padding on seats, at least for me, would probably be a functional, you know, but others could differ, right? Now, bell or horn, question mark, is that a functional, having a bell or a horn on a bike to ward off people in front of you while you're riding? Is that a functional or non-functional? A bike stand, that is, you know, you want to park it somewhere and have a sandwich or read a book or something, or see the sights. What about that? Or do you just kind of lay it on the ground? Okay. And a water bottle, do you know, Some people don't, some people don't. Okay, so those are question marks, okay? All right, now what I'd like to, let's just do a little interactive session. I'd like everyone, if you've got laptops, whatever, you just get on www.menti.com. Here's the code. You can also, that's the link as well. And if you want, I can also share the QR code. But there is a QR code. Can everybody see this, please?
Yes, we can see it, Max.
Yes, we can do that.
All right. Okay. Okay. I'll come to the questions, and they're good questions. I'll come to that in a minute, but just let me know. I hope, you know, I can't really see everyone. There are too many people, but I'm hoping everybody is able to get to the QR code, right? And or to the menti.com. Everybody in there? It does. Okay. Yep.
Sorry, Max, just to let you know that we have enabled the chat function, and would you mind dropping in the link, if that's okay? Oh, yep, that's perfect that you've just displayed that on the screen. I'll copy that and I'll pop that in the chat now.
All right. Okay. Just anybody who can't get onto menti.com with that code, or it doesn't work for you, just put it in the chat, and Charmaine can deal with it. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so I'm hoping everybody can get there. Okay. All right, now what I'm going to do is gee whiz. All right, so before I start with the interactive session, let me tell you know, there's no right or wrong answer. Okay, some people will say it's parts of the bike, like I just discussed. Some people will say it's a functional requirement, gotta have it. Some people say it's a non-functional, nice to have, good to have, but nice to have. Okay, so there's no right or wrong answer, and I know this Menti will tell you whether you're right or wrong, so just ignore that. Just what I'd like everyone to do is to give me your opinion on whether what I'm going to display is what you consider as a functional, or you consider it as a non-functional. All right. Okay, so let's start. So don't worry about the points or anything. Okay. So just look at you. Are road bikes gears, the gears on the road bike, are they a functional requirement or non-functional? So just vote on your Menti. Can, okay, so that's the time. Okay, time's up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so 29 people said yes, 18 said no, which is a significant number, and I think whatever, 1 or 2 said unsure. That's fine as well. If you're unsure, that's fine as well. Okay, so you can see just from here, you can see that 29 versus 18, they're pretty comparable. Majority said yes, it's functional, but there are a significant number who said no. All right, let's go down to the next one. Okay. Okay. Yep. Question 2. Yeah, just ignore this. Are a bike's lights a functional requirement? the lights. So that's the front light and the rear light. I just pause so that people can. Three, two, one. Like lights. 32 functional. Yep. 17 non-functional. Okay. Pretty much similar kind of numbers. Yep. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Yep. Okay. Here's some of the people. Okay. Question 3. Again, don't worry about points. I just want you to give me your honest opinion. Are roadblocks bell or horn an NFR? Is a bell or a horn a non-functional? It's a nice to have. Is it a nice to have, or is it a functional? 3, 2, 1. Yep, time's up.
We do have a couple of comments in the chat as well. I'm not sure if you'd like to address them, Max. We've got
right.
Pascal. Would you like me to read them out for you, or would you like to read them?
No, yeah, you can read them out. I'm not able to. You can read them out if you want.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
We've got Pascal, which has said the requirement is probably the ability of the transport solution to adjust speed according to the terrain and effort gives us a solution to me.
Can you repeat that, please?
So Pascal said the requirement is probably the ability of the transport solution to adjust speed according to the terrain, and in brackets he's got slope, etc., and effort. Gears is a solution to me. I think this was in relation to the last question on Mentimeter.
So that's for the other one. Is that for the bike lights? Pascal, is that for the bike lights?
Before, the one before that, I think.
The gears?
Yes.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, Pascal, you're asking the gears are, they are applicable for the terrain that you're riding on with the bike. Would that be right? And I agree with you for sure. I mean, look, I'm not a bike pro. I'm not a pro. So, but if you're going, you know, if you're doing something like a Tour de France or something, yeah. And if you're going up and down hills, sure. The gears, you will need gears.
No,
I don't know if.
Can you hear me? What I'm saying is that
yes.
The gear is probably more the solution to a requirement, and the requirement is probably more around, you know, the ability of a device or transport solution to adjust speed according to, you know, the terrain you might be going on or the level of effort you want to put in. So I'm just saying that the gear is probably more for the solution than a requirement.
Okay. Yeah, sure. It's a solution, but do you want a gear? Is it functional? I mean, will you accept a bike with gears or no? Will you accept a bike without gears?
Some people get fixies.
Yeah.
A one-speed bike.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I've seen those. I've seen those. Rare, but I've seen those. Some people actually favor them. You know, they like them. So very, very true. I don't know. With the Tour de France, you're allowed to have gears, right? The bikes. I mean, that's how much I know. I think you're allowed to have gears, but anyway, whatever. You're quite right. So this is exactly what I'm saying. Depends on, and as you just very rightly said, it depends on the terrain. And in our case in IT, it depends on the site. It depends on the project and the site that you're working on. It all depends whether something is a functional or a non-functional. That's exactly my point, Pascal. Okay, so thank you for that question. Let me just, I'm a bit
We
conscious
do
of
have
time. Yeah.
Sorry, you go, Charmaine.
That's okay. We've got Mars with her hand up. She's also popped a statement in the chat box. But Mars, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to challenge that question. Why would be lights, gears, all the other stuff, why would that be a solution? That's a need, that's a business need, a business requirement to be able to ride that bike. How we actually built those gears and those lights and the remaining other requirements, that's the technical solution or the solution recommendation. It's the how that's the solution. The want, the what, where, the what, who, and when is the requirements as far as from my understanding of what the requirements are. So when you look at it from a holistic view, to be able to ride that bike, we're wanting all of these requirements, whether it's functional or non-functional. Hence the gears, the lights to meet legal regulations, and then you've got the horns. They're just the additional, the should have or the would have or could have, but how it's going to be built, that's the solution itself. It's the how is the solution. Am I correct to say that?
All right, now just a minute. You're saying, yes, what we would like to have, are you saying a horn or a light on the bike? You would like to have it, but it's not,
Yeah.
you would accept the bike without lights? Would you accept
With
it?
every week during requirements elicitation, we have to have the must-go, the must-have, the should-have, the could-have, and can't have, right? So any requirements or business needs that we ascertain from the business stakeholders, they're the requirements, whether it's non-functional or functional. Put NFR or FR on the side for now, but during requirements elicitation, we need to understand what is the must-have, the should-have, could-have, and can't have.
Yeah,
The
sure.
solution itself,
Yep.
the solution itself is building the bicycle, is building those parts and put it together to meet the business needs and requirements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but sorry, your name was?
Mars.
Mars.
I was the one
yeah.
who asked the question before about, is it safe to assume functional requirements are the technical system solution and non-functional requirements are the processes and procedures that to utilize the implemented technical solution.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I get it, but there is usually, in projects, we have a discussion, we have an interpretation. There are things which you can't do without. I mean, for example, a payroll system, you have to make the payment to the people who work in your organization, right? There's no question about it. You don't have a system, you don't have a viable system unless you've got that solution in place. But whether the solution is accessible, I mean, you can get the payment information within 5 seconds, or it takes you 10 seconds or 15 seconds. That's something, okay, yeah, of course, it's nice to have it within 5 seconds or 3 seconds. But if you get it within 15 seconds, it's not it's kind of bad, but it's not a deal breaker, right? You still have a payroll system. You still can make payments to the people who work there. It's right. It's nice to have it so that you can get the payment information within 3 seconds. But if you don't, it's not a deal breaker. It's my point.
I guess at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is during requirement solicitation, we don't bog down into the solution mode because we haven't done any change impact analysis. We haven't done any, how is it risk, identify any risk on BAU process or BAU systems. We also haven't spoken to the dev team at this stage. So therefore we don't know feasibility and sizing. So during requirements elicitation, when the business needs saying, okay, we want to be able to ride from A to B to get to A to B, right? We want a seat, a wheel, blah, 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 blah. So these are the needs, the requirements to get from position A to position B.
Yep.
Okay, so that's when the requirements come in, the business starts telling them, okay, well, this is what we want, this is what we need, yada yada, and the business analysts, we need to verify and validate those requirements by doing change impact analysis. How is this going to impact the current business? How is this going to impact other departments? How is this going to impact other systems, etc., etc., before we go into solution mode? Because at the end of the day, we can't go into technical solution without all the facts. And also we haven't had that discussion with the dev team because they're the one that they're the developers.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, sure. The solution comes after that, for sure. I'm not denying that. Okay. But before we get into solution, we need to know what exactly the solution is going to deal with, is going to implement, is going to deliver, right? And here's what I'm coming to. What it's going to deliver, do we put some of these NFRs in there or not? Now, I understand what you're saying, that there could be your client or your business client or the product owner or whoever it is who's calling the shots. They say that, okay, we need this in the payroll system. And if they do say that, then you've got to put it in the solution. There's, you can't get away from it. There's no compromise. There's no there's no room for negotiation. But what I'm saying is that area, Mars, can differ from one side to another, is my point. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I absolutely know where you're coming from. I just wanted to basically challenge the question that it's a solution. Some people were saying it's the solution. We're going into solution about the seats, the lights and the gears and all that. And that's why I was questioning, why is it a solution when to me it's a requirement? That's all. That's all. That's all.
Yep. Good point. Okay. So I just got two more questions on this. So we're on this bell and horn, and we got this one. And again, here, some people, a minority are saying it's a NFR. So 21 are saying it is an NFR, and 27 are saying it's not an NFR, and so it's a functional requirement. Okay. All right.
Max, if I can just jump in for a minute. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for popping all the comments through the chat. I think one of the great things about these webinars is actually the discussion that's generated. There are actually a lot of comments, and I'm not sure that Charmaine and I will be able to read each of these comments out. So I think what we'll do is keep the discussion going within the chat. But if there are questions that you would like to ask aloud, raise your hand and then we'll give you the ability to speak. But we'll keep the chat comments as just discussion between the attendees. So I don't think we can actually read all of them out. Is that okay with you, Max? And if there's any questions, use the Q&A and we can read them out to Max. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Max.
Okay. All right. The other one, did we cover this one? All right. So this is a bike stand. Is that an NFR? Is it just a nice to have, a stand for the bike? Or, I've seen plenty of riders who just kind of park the bike next to a tree or something. It's up to you. Let's see what happens. Okay, time's up. It's NFR. Most people said it's an NFR. Some people said no, it's not. Some people say, okay, all right. That's cool. I extend. And this is the last one. Water bottle and holder. Is that an NFR? Here we go. 10:09. Okay. Okay, pretty even. Pretty even. All right, it's pretty even. Okay, all right. So anyway, I think people have got the point, and we've had a good discussion on it as well. There are differences, what people would say is a nice to have and what they consider an essential functional requirement. Okay, so let me just stop this. And all right, so we're done with this thing, and thanks everyone for your input. I'm a little conscious of time. I want to get through the remaining slides. Okay, the other thing is application security, right? Now, if you look at this, the BABOK page, it lists security, application security, which is very much in the news today, in these days, as a NFR. And if you go to the page, you'll see it. It says security trusted information is an NFR. Now, I would kind of differ. I would say it used to be NFR, but I think right now it's integral part of all applications to ensure that we have the right and enough level of security in the application because of hacking, ransomware, and so on. Okay, so cyber threats and attacks. Okay, I'm actually working on a project right now, which is looking at endpoint hardening. If people don't know about it, this means the hardening at on your laptop, on your device. That's the endpoint, and to look at things like email, they call email firewalls and so on. Okay, so cyber threat intelligence. So I would kind of differ with what's in the BABOK page in here, and I would make security, application security, a functional requirement. That is, I gotta have it. You know, I'm not going to accept a product. I'm not going to accept a product without adequate security. Okay. All right. All right. I just want to very quickly cover a case study that I did when I was a business analyst at the Department of Immigration and at Border Protection a few years ago. So they merged two federal departments, Customs and Immigration, together into one, and there are about 400 business requirements. Okay, out of that, when I did the analysis, about 220 were core functional requirements. Core, gotta have, and about 80 to 100 were NFRs. And there were remaining a mixed bag of solution features and nice to have things. Okay. Now, part of that was web content access guidelines, and this is pretty big now, especially in federal departments. It's called WCAG, and here's the link if everybody wants to go do it. And that is, okay, is your application can it be used by users with disabilities, vision impaired example, and a host of other things. So those are the WCAG guidelines, and it has to meet that. Okay, so I'll just go to very quickly. It has to, your application has to be perceivable. That means it has to be text alternatives to what you show on the screen. Time-based media, distinguishable, adaptable. I don't want to spend too much time. Operable is another thing. Keyboard accessible. It should give enough time for a response. And it should not have like loud noises and, you know, which can cause seizures and physical reactions. Navigable input modalities, that is different ways to input your data. Understandable, readable, predictable, and this is all from WCAG 2.1. Input assistance enabled. Robust systems recovers gracefully from abort events. So if the system crashes for some reason, server goes down or something else happens, you can roll back to a stable, safe checkpoint. Okay. Okay. Having gone through WCAG 2.1, when are NFRs done? So when during a project SDLC, which is a system development life cycle, when do we do the nice to haves or good to haves? In my experience, in most cases, they're left to the end. I don't know how others feel in this audience. The project, I'll give you an example. The project I'm currently working on, it's a cyber hub project. I won't go into further details because it's quite confidential. But I asked the program director, well, what about NFRs? Okay, we have a whole lot of functional requirements, what we need to do in the application, what we we absolutely have to have. But what about NFRs? And what he told me is, no, we're going to leave that out right now. We're not worried about it right now. This is a 2 to 3 year program of work. So it's a large program of work, multi-million dollars. But that was his response, that we're not going to worry about NFRs for the time being. Okay, but I've also worked on some other projects where there are JIRA user stories for NFR. For example, accessibility, operability, and so on. Okay, and the JIRA story is not done, not agile done until NFR is also tested. Okay. Okay. Final takeaways, and I'll just leave a little bit of time for additional questions from the audience. So my message to my peers and fellow business analysts and others is that there are gray areas between a functional requirement and NFR, depending on the site, depending on which project you're working on. Like I just said, my project or any other project that you're working on. And it is subject to a mutual agreement, understanding with your product owner, your other stakeholders who are influential, okay? Prioritization, like I said, mostly they are prioritized to the end in my experience, but I'm happy to get others' opinions on that in Agile sprints. Okay, and implementation strategies. in some cases, they're integrated with the functional requirement. Okay, so the functional requirement is not complete until the surrounding NFRs are also completed. So I've seen that happen as well. Okay. I think that's all I'd like to cover. I'm happy to take someone to any questions.
So we've got a question from Chris. Is an NFR just a requirement that hasn't been turned into a functional requirement yet?
Okay. It could be, Chris. So like I said, there are gray areas, right? If you take like application security, like we just said, in the in earlier times, we would put security as an NFR, like I explained that, that Babok page I showed you. It has security as an NFR. But I think now it should be turned into a functional requirement. It has to be, because I don't think the product owner or the stakeholder should accept the system without it being proven to be secure, to have enough security on it, so that it is protected from cyber attacks and malware and so on. That's my view. I would put security as a functional requirement. So to answer your question, yes, it can. Some NFRs can definitely turn into functional requirements. That is gotta haves. Does that answer your question, Chris?
Chris has said yes, it does.
Okay. Right. Okay. Can't see the questions. Can you just read out to me, please?
Sure. We've got another question from Dale.
Sure.
Max, so do you think the gears are a requirement?
In my view, I would have said yes. It's a functional. I'm not going to accept the bike without gears, but then I'm not going to accept it. But there are lots of riders who do ride bikes without gears. So what was the name of this person?
Dale has said, but what if you didn't know about gears?
What if I didn't know about gears?
Yeah. Dale, I've just given, you can, if you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and you can have a chat with Max, or you can ask your question to Max.
Yeah. Yeah, so all of those seem to be solutions to me. There's no point saying the bike is a requirement, or the frame, the wheels, the gears, the horns. They're not requirements. They're the solution to a need. Like as Pascal was writing, the need to be able to ride easily up a hill. You need the requirement is, to be able to ride easily up a hill. The requirement isn't the gears, because you mightn't have a clue what the solutions to. You mightn't have a clue what the solution is to the requirements. You just have to specify the requirement, right? So,
I take your point. I take your point. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm using a bike. Obviously, we deal with IT systems and applications which are not bikes. They're much bigger. But I just used the bike as an example, as an illustrative example. But I take your point. Yes. Look, for example, like for a payroll system, what would you say would be the need? Dale, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, it's like in my business, it's to be able to calculate a person's pay correctly. Now, yeah, the answer is a payroll system, I guess. But that could take multiple forms. In a small business, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. In our business, it's Procedure, right? Yeah. So you don't, when you're writing requirements, from my experience, you don't know the solution, and we're encouraged not to even guess what it is.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And when you're working with applications and you're constrained to those applications, like we are a lot, then you can go that one step further and assume they are the solution, I suppose. But just as a raw kind of thing, if you just raw straight where like we've got a business that transports dangerous goods. Now, I don't know what the solution is to all the needs there, but like we need a system that where we can record information about dynamite, say. I don't know what the answer to that is, right? So, but I just know what the requirement is, what the need is.
Yeah.
And that's that's like I don't know about the existence of the bike at this point. When I'm getting requirements, I just don't know about the bike, and I don't know if the answer is a bike or a scooter or a skateboard or a car.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I get your point. I understand where you're coming from, Dale. And that customs and immigration system I worked on, the business need was, if cargo was coming into Australia, they need to have the manifest of the cargo, whether it's by ship or by air or whichever way it's coming in. There has to be a manifest of the goods. There has to be a description of the goods. There has to be the consignor, the consignee, things of that nature. Okay. So yes. So what is the solution? Yes, the solution is we built a solution to do just that, to be able to record the cargo manifest. Let's say it's in a ship. And then to be able to profile it. That is, what kind of cargo is it? Is it snakes from Africa? Is it is it diamonds? Is it something that we need to check before we pass it through customs or whatever? Okay, so yes, you're right. I understand where you're coming from, but what I'm saying is that there are some things which are like in that cargo management system that we built, we had to have a function to record the manifest and to record the consignor, the consignee, the address, profile of both, where it's coming from, which country it's coming from, which ship it's coming from, all those details, right? If we needed to have an application which recorded all this, and which our customs personnel could go in and check the cargo manifest and see if there's dangerous good or hazardous goods in there. And if they did, they would stop the cargo from entering and do an inspection and so on. Okay. So we built that application to do that, to satisfy the need. Yes, I understand that. I can take one last question. Is there any?
Yeah, we've got a question from Richard. Do you know of guidelines on how to prove that an NFR has been met by the project team, for example, robustness, reliability, and maintainability?
Yeah, great question. Things like reliability and robustness, you can check, especially in UAT environments, that's user acceptance testing or business acceptance testing, or pre-prod environments, whichever you have, you can make the system fail or go down and see if you can have a graceful recovery. That is, if the system goes down at say 11 a.m., can I recover to 1 minute before or something, whatever the NFR is. So yes, it can be checked so that the robustness, whether you are having checkpoints on your application as you go along, so that you can recover back to that checkpoint and continue from there. Yeah, you might lose a little bit of data. You might lose, say, the last minute or last 5 minutes of data of transactions, but at least you haven't lost everything. You're able to get back to a safe checkpoint. For robustness, reliability is basically whether the system is available to you when you need it, and if your system, if your system is to be up 24/7 or is to be up, say, 8 to 8, that is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Normally systems are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Is the system up during those business hours reliably? Okay, so again, you can like simulate that. You can put an event which makes the system go down within that 8 to 8 p.m. and see how soon you can recover from that system going down to being up again. Okay, so if you can make the system go up within a minute to 5 minutes, earlier the better, then I would say your system is pretty reliable. We can go into it in more detail. There are people who have fail-safe, that is standby systems, which take over if the primary system fails. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's some good ideas. Thanks very much.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can't hear you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
He's said yes, it does. He's typed yes, it does.
Okay.
Max, we've just got the question from Mars from the beginning of the talk. May you please provide the answer of my previous question? Is it safe to say that functional requirements are the technical system solution and non-functional requirements are the process or procedures to utilize the implemented technical system solution?
Mars, I wouldn't put it just that way. Yes, the functional requirements need a technical solution for sure, but some of the NFRs like reliability or robustness also need technical solutions. So like I just said, if your application is, you have a fail-safe or a standby application, that is, you have two, a primary and a secondary. I don't want to go into too much technical detail, but if you have a primary and a secondary side, and if the primary side goes down for any reason, there's an auto switch over to the secondary side. That's a reliable system. That's also a reliable or a robust system. But it's a technical implementation, isn't it? It's a technical solution that has to be implemented, isn't it? Mars, are you with me, Mars?
Yeah, I'm here. I guess what I'm trying to say is if let's say we're in a project where we're wanting to enhance the current system that we're using, right? For whatever reason. I work in insurance, and so obviously this enhancement or brand new system, whatever it may be, that's all the technical system solution. Now, non-functional for me is how do we go about using the newly acquired enhanced system solution or the newly acquired brand new system that we've just implemented? And that's when I do my change impact assessment, where I liaise with all the procedure writers and the process analysts, where they do process mapping, so that they know how to use the system that we've just implemented. Does that make sense? That's where I'm coming from an IT agile project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get you, but isn't that more of training and a training kind of
Process and
issue?
procedures is part of training. Yes, training, L&D, learning and development. That's also
Yeah,
part of, to me, that's also part of the process and procedures, because that comes in hand. So
sure.
any new systems that we've either enhanced or brand new that we've just implemented to the business, we
Yeah,
need to be able to advise or guide our staff or our employees on how to use it. So that's when process maps are created, procedure documents are created, policy documents are created, etc., etc. And if there is a need for a face-to-face learning training session, then so be it. So that's why I was saying, is it safe to say that functional requirements during elicitation are the technical system solution, and the non-functional requirements are more to do with processes and procedures that needs to be in place to utilize what we've implemented?
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I get you saying. So one of them is accessibility, one of the NFRs, and the list I gave is not the full list. Accessibility, um, readability, presentability. These are these are all in the mix of being an NFR. Okay, so yeah, you're quite right. So you implement a new feature or even a brand new system, the documentation, the training of your users, the impact assessment, making sure they understand what the impacts are on using the new system, um, and the flow-on impacts with other satellite applications. For sure, sure. I definitely agree with that, and that's part of. If you want to, you know, um, I would say some of those what we're talking about right now, Mars, could even be part of functional. That means you are not going to accept the system unless and until these artifacts are in place, right? For example, a training manual or the actual training itself, maybe, maybe for you it's functional. I mean, because you're not going to accept the system. It's not a viable system unless this is in place. Isn't that right?
Yes and no. To me, that's non-functional requirements. It's definitely a requirement, but it's non-functional in my eyes, because it's the documentation that needs to be followed to comply with utilizing the system. But
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, and thank you so much, Max. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the dialogue. How are we doing for time, Shami?
Good. We've got 20 minutes left. The wrap up will only take about 5 minutes. So if we do have another question, we do have a little bit more time. Or if you wanted to discuss anything else, we already have a hand raised, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. So my name is Shubham, and I'm like not a business analyst yet, but I'm just here to understand few perspectives and dynamics of business analysts. So from
Yeah.
what I have understood now, I have come up to like a doubt that I would like to ask, which would be I already posted it in the chat section, but as I was told earlier, it's not like possible to discuss. So I just wanted to know how to be sure that the NFR and FR have been properly drafted for a project, and neither the client nor the BAs are in assumption that that because they are in the gray area, so like they won't be thinking that okay, this have been already understood. So how to be extra sure about that? How to have those sort of conversations with clients?
Yeah. All right. It depends. Sorry, your name again was Shubham, right?
Shubham. Yeah.
Shubham. Okay, Shubham. Short answer is it depends, Shubham. It depends on the project, the site that you're in. Like I think, like I said in my presentation, the project I'm currently working on, it's a cyber hub project. And when I asked them about, okay, what about the NFRs? They said, no, we're not worried about it. Forget about it right now. We're not concerned with it. It's a 3-year. We'll cover it, later down the track. So, and this is from the program director. So it depends on the site. Okay, is the short answer. I was kind of surprised at his answer, but that's his answer. I thought the NFRs should have been addressed to some extent, like things like reliability, responsiveness, operability, maybe portability, but that was not the way. In most cases, in my experience, Shubham, in most projects, people worry about getting the functional requirements done first. They take front and fore, they're done first, and then the NFRs are done later. It can differ from site to site, but generally, I don't know how the others in the audience feel about it, but that's generally the case that I've come. That's been my experience. Answer your question,
Okay.
Shubham?
Yeah. That does make sense to me. Thank you so much for your answer.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
Yes, I've got a question from Dale. Max, what's your preferred way of expressing an FR? A system shall or ability to? Or when this happens, then that happens, so that, or just use what suits the situation?
Can you just repeat that once again? Just repeat the question, please.
Yeah, so Dale, I've got you on. Do you want to ask the question?
Oh, yeah. I'm just interested to know what's your preferred way of expressing a functional requirement, Max? Do you have a standard go-to way of expressing a requirement that you like to use? I mean, in my business, there's been a bit of a trend in the last couple of years just to say, functional requirement 1_1 or whatever, ability to do blah, ability to. That's how they say them, but I'm not sure it's always that satisfactory. But yeah, there's multiple ways you can say them. I've read those Carl Wieger ones where his are quite, there's about 3 syllables or 3 parts to the requirement sentence. And I'm not sure any of them are bad. They're all good. But I'm just interested.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yep. Do you remember the 3 parts, Dale?
I do. Hang on, because I keep a copy of it in my diary. Hang on, it's the system shall, followed by some sort of action like display, report, print, email, delete, calculate, whatever, so that, and then you have some sort of observable result. And then somewhere within that, you have to specify the trigger condition. So what's going to trigger it? What's going to trigger the need for the requirement, I guess. And the example that I've written on my pad is, and this is straight out of one of Carl Wieger's early books, If the requested chemical is found in the chemical stock room, the system shall display a list of all containers of the chemical that are currently in the stock room. It's a pretty good requirement, that one, but you know, it's you need patience and lots of brains to write all those.
Okay. Okay. In my experience, I don't have a hard and fast rule. Dale, there's no, you know, absolutely set in the stone way of doing it. The format that you had is pretty good one. This sounds a lot like a user story, like a Jira use story, to me. But yeah, I think you should mention. It depends on the functional requirement, but you should be mentioning the actor, the situation, you know, what is required to happen, like, you know, what exactly is going to happen, and you know, what is, you know, what is what is non acceptable. I mean, you've got to get this, you've got to have this function to happen. So as long as you get that point across, I think you're in a good place, it seems to me. But I think in most projects currently we use Jira user stories, which are written according, you know, pretty much the way that you just outlined. With, okay, this is the situation, this needs to happen by this actor by within this time or whatever. Okay. So yeah, the Jira stories are the go. I don't know if people are working on word requirements. There may be people are, but in most projects now it's Jira user stories. How many people are still doing business requirements using Excel or Word? Show of hands, please. Okay. Okay, I mean, you know, like as long as you are able to document and to make the team make it understandable what you want, what is a functional requirement. I don't think really there's a you know, an absolutely right or wrong format to use, or a specific format. Dale? That's my answer.
Yep, good, thanks.
Are there any questions, or we're over time? If I'll take one last one if there is, Charmaine. Otherwise, I'm happy to close the call. It's going on to 7:30.
Yep, no worries. Any questions, just raise your hand.
Three, two, one. Okay, that's it, everyone.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you manage your requirements? You mentioned Jira and Excel as a couple of ways to manage them, but how do you manage them personally?
Okay, right now, pretty much I work with Jira, but I've also worked on Word documents. I think a number of us may have had, may have used Word. Word, you know, you can do a lot of formatting. You can, you know, you can do the same thing in Excel more or less, but Word, in my experience, Word is one of the principal vehicles that people use to record requirements. Charmaine. But people are,
Okay,
of course,
great.
people are using Jira a heck of a lot right now.
Yeah, it is a very popular platform at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, what an
I just
interesting
want to,
session.
yeah, I just want to end by thanking everyone for being on the session. I hope people got something out of it. I hope it helps you in your project work, in your career. Shubham, you're just starting off, I understand. Welcome to the tribe. So I hope you have a good career, Shubham.
And thanks to everybody that submitted questions tonight as well. And thanks, Max, for your examples, which led to those discussions and passionate debates around requirement definition. As Charlene had stated earlier, the interactive discussions are what make these webinars so great. So thanks everybody for getting involved. I just wanted to let everyone know about our upcoming webinars that we have. We do have another webinar tomorrow hosted by the Adelaide branch, and that's about requirements and how to find them. I hope to see everybody there. That one should be an interesting session as well. I also just wanted to call for volunteers. As many of you know, the IIBA is a volunteer-run organisation. And if you're interested in volunteering for the IIBA, please visit the website on the screen to register your interest. It's a really great way to join and be involved in our growing VA community, and also be a part of these events as well if you're looking to join the event stream. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover before we wrap up as well, Max?
No, just thanks everyone. Have a good night and enjoy the rest of your evening.
I think we do have someone that's raised their hand.
Hello. Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any link for tomorrow's webinar as well?
There is. What I'll do is I'll share it in the chat. Give me just a sec. I think all of the events are on the IIBA website too, or if you're on LinkedIn, they do distribute all of the webinars there, and they'll have the links to be able to register for each webinar online.
Oh, that would be great. I just looked it in the LinkedIn for then.
Yeah, okay, no worries. If you do want to stick around, then I'll find the link and I'll pop it in the chat box. But feel free to jump on LinkedIn and follow them on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, sure thing. I've already followed them. Yeah, I just look for the link on the LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Great.
Bye
well,
for now.
Everybody, bye. I just wanted to say that you're all eligible for 1 CDU for your attendance to tonight's webinar as well. So please just keep your thank you for attending this webinar email in your records as proof that you attended. And I hope everyone enjoyed the session. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Max.